A couple of you have asked, and no, I don't think I'm dying. I mean, we're all dying, but I don't think I'm dying. I'm pretty sure I'm not sick. I just have what so many of you have, springtime allergies. For some of you, it attacks you in your head or your eyes or your nose. For me, it's more throat and upper chest, so that's what's beating the tar out of me. But other than singing like Barry White and goofing up one of the songs really badly, that was not the Pulse Kids' fault. That was on me. And they will never let me forget it. And that's. Was that Luke? Luke, he's my man. Luke's my buddy. Thank you to the folks who really orchestrated some of this. I would tell you who they all are, but that would encourage them to not keep doing the service they do around here. But the lights are amazing. They are dimmable. And so for some of our special events, it'd be tough to do a Good Friday service in here, because it's so bright compared to what it was before. But these 4 lights are separate than those 8 lights, and they're all dimmable, and it's really pretty great. The line of sight is better. I can see all of you, and whether or not you're staying awake or not. So sorry, back row people, but you're exposed. Here's the question of the morning. Why do so many people so often find themselves being more selfish than they perceive themselves to be? Why, and I'll just say why are we at times greedy? Why do we have this determination, quite frankly, to have our own way? And the Bible would say, be our own God, right? There's only one answer to the question. We think that if we were in charge, life would be better. At least for us. At least for us. Nobody decides to be selfish or greedy just because they want to make their own life worse. No one does that. Somewhere deep inside us, we think life would be better with me in charge. Probably for everybody, but at least for me. And it sounds silly to say out loud, but we function that way from time to time. This is not a new struggle. It goes all the way back to Genesis 3. We're probably a month away from that on Wednesday nights, if that's the only one you want to come to. So, is the basis of the temptation from the serpent to Adam and Eve. It's that simple. Don't you think it would be better for you in charge, for you to decide for yourself what is good and evil? I can't, it surprises me so much how often I say that from this place. But it is the crux of humanity and wanting to either live for God or to live for ourselves. And even once we're believers, we still have our sin natures inside us. And because it's still a struggle, we still struggle with this thing. We decide what's good and evil, what's right and wrong. I want to be in charge of my own life because I think it would be better if I'm in charge. But here's the question that Proverbs 3 actually answers. Is that true? Is that true? That life is better with you calling all the shots? So here we go. Chapter 3 is so rich, we could have easily spent a couple more weeks on chapter 3 alone. We're not going to do that. But we have today, so I've tried really hard to figure out what to spend most of my time on through these verses. And as we've been in Proverbs now, this is the 3rd week, the first week was to convince us that we have a need for wisdom. Even the smartest among us has a need for wisdom. We need to live our lives with the highest degree of skill. We only have one shot at life. There are no really do-overs as far as your life goes. I was with the smaller children at the 9 o'clock hour today, and one of the adults in there said, I said, well, wouldn't you wish you want to be young again? I didn't ask the question, someone did. And she said, I'd love to be young again. I'd love to be younger again, but not young again. Not at all. No, thank you very much. Well, anyway, the second week was to convince us that if we want that wisdom that we need, we have to pursue it. We're going to pursue a path toward wisdom, a path toward, quite frankly, foolishness. And so today, my desire this morning is to simply talk for, I think briefly, but you never really know. But what are the rewards of wisdom? If we recognize we need it, if we pursue it, so what? What happens next? Here goes. Proverbs 3:1. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. Solomon, passing down wisdom that he got from dad, David, King David. And he's giving this to his son, and it's put in the Bible not just so that we know what he said to them, but it's what God is saying to us. Sounds pretty similar to last week, and you're going to get a little bit of that today. One of the reasons we may take periodic breaks from Proverbs, because it is so repetition. But if you pursue wisdom, what you really get is a better relationship, a closer relationship with God. That's what you get. And that closer relationship begins to change your heart. It begins to change your spirit, your soul. It becomes what defines you. And it actually comes back from the inside out as we travel through this journey of life on whatever path you're on. That's verse 1. So what's the reward? Well, it's found in verse 2. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Now, one of the things we need to say a couple times as we go through the book of Proverbs, that these are proverbs. They're not promises, right? The most violated promise in all of Proverbs is what? Anyone want to take a guess? If you train up a child in the way he should go, when he's old, he'll not depart. Anyone? Don't raise your hands. Anyone having any departures? Right? It's not a promise, it's a Proverbs. If you do this, sooner or later, God will remind them of all the good things you taught them about God mostly, and they'll come back to that path of wisdom. That's what is most likely going to happen. It's a proverb. This is a proverb. Years of life and peace they'll add to you. Doesn't mean if you seek God's commandments and you have a good devotional time every day, you're guaranteed to be as old as Daryl, right? There's no guarantee of that. There are many godly people, and Daryl, I love you. Yeah, that's right. And it's used sometimes in the same way. There's no guarantee of that. Godly people die early. Almost everyone in this room knows someone who loved God like crazy, who left this earth far too soon from our perspective. I usually view it as God's reward. You've toiled long enough. Get up here. Right? That's the idea. But as a general rule, as a proverb, and it's not a fortune cookie proverb. It's not that. It's better than that. It's God's wisdom proverb, right? As a general rule of life, if you live your life with skill, with wisdom, it is going to help you live a longer life. It'll lead to longevity. And there's, a relevant question concerning the length of days. That's not how we talk. Hey, how's your length of days going? Still 24 hours. I don't know. We're more likely to say something, I thought this day would never end, right? I won't give any examples of a day like that for me. And it's usually not a positive thing. But in the positive realm, it would be something like, I wish this moment would never end. That's length of days. That's the idea behind all of that. These moments with your friends, your family, your kids, whoever it might be, it just becomes something so special. They're almost magical, which is a word I don't necessarily love, but it is just awesome. Just awesome, and you just wish it didn't end. For some of you, that was ski season. I did basin close yesterday? Today. Oh, so that's why some of the blue chairs are still empty. Okay. So there's those kinds of things. It's a poetic phrase, but it's these moments that define life. I'm a sports fan, and I don't apologize for it, very often anyway. And this past weekend was the NFL draft. And when every talking head, that means people who had a microphone talking about the stuff leading up between the picks, but every talking head says, they'll never forget this moment for the rest of their lives. And for some of them, that's probably true, right? For most of them, probably, because they've just become very wealthy. And those kinds of things they're maybe pursuing. But that's the idea. It is a memorable moment. A great exercise for you this afternoon is think back of some of the best memories you had, maybe with your parents or your grandparents, or if you have adult children, with them, right? Smaller kids, we're trying to forget a bunch of those, so we'll leave that for another time. But I wish this day would never end. I just love that. So by fearing the Lord, keeping His commandments, we create more of these moments than we would have had otherwise because we've lived wisely. Second part of that verse, and peace they will add to you. Again, lots of repetition here. Even through 1st and 2nd Samuel, peace is that word that gets misused sometimes, so it's shalom. And I'm saying the English transliteration of that, right? I can't look at our Jewish friends right now because I'm sure I even say that wrong. And it's not just absence of conflict. It is mutual flourishing among the community, not just you as an individual, but the household and beyond, your relational circle. It's a beautiful thing. Most of Proverbs is not about me. It's about us. And I think it colors, or should, change the way we view it. It's about how we live life together in a community, as we do life together in society. And that mutual flourishing, which I already talked about, that's shalom. That's what that peace word is. And quite frankly, that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants, the vast majority of people want to get along, right? They not, again, avoid the fringe, extremist or whatever, but we don't have that. It's what we want. We just can't agree how to have it, because I certainly cannot let you be in charge. And it'd be better off if I was in charge. Now we're back to where we started. And so that's the problem. You know, there are certain things we want. We want safety. We want security. We want there to be opportunity. Some people would even want more to say equal opportunity. When there's not those things in our communities, it bothers us. And we want to help the homeless and the poor and make sure that everyone has enough food to eat, shelter. And there are things that most people would say, yeah, it'd be good if all those things could happen. But the conflict is, how do we get there and who pays for it, right? And so it revolves around this simple question that I found fascinating the last 2 weeks. Is shalom the goal, or is it a reward? You see, because if it's a goal, then externally we try to impose peace on circumstances and on people. We create structures, put things in place that might externally at least enhance peace. Most obviously, the context of government, and the government serves a very important purpose. I'm not speaking evil of government today, won't do it. But I think we need to respect that. But the reality is that government will never produce biblical shalom, ever. Throughout time, thousands of years, governments have tried, right? They even nicknamed themselves the Pax Romana, right? The Roman peace. And you know how they kept that? You saw soldiers with guns everywhere. No one dared upset the Roman peace. You can't do it. You can't just keep passing laws and regulations and put all this stuff in place that's going to force people to love their neighbor. It's not going to work. How many people love their HOA? Yeah, we're either crying or laughing, right? But it doesn't work that way. Most HOAs carry insurance. Did you know why? Because they don't want the people in the HOA suing each other. Horrible. Shalom is not the goal. It's a reward. And when you recognize and you understand that it's a reward, it starts, the Bible says, by fearing God, keeping His commandments, choosing to live wisely. We've used the word skillfully. And as an outflow of that, as a reward of that, people change from the inside out, and it benefits everybody, even the person who changes last, or maybe doesn't change at all. They still benefit from other people living like God intended. Now, that can seem overwhelming, but it does start with me, and it does start in your circle with you. Within your home, if you're married, within your marriage, if you're a single parent, with you and the kids, your workplace, your church, your school. Frankly, if you can't bring shalom, if you can't bring peace to those environments, tell people you were just visiting here today, right? We want people to be agents of change on God's behalf, not because we're externally forcing it, because we're living it eternally as a result of loving God, fearing Him, keeping His commandments. It starts by learning to love our neighbors as ourselves. But even more than that, when you think of the loving your neighbors as yourself, you think of a couple Bible verses, and it starts with something you have to have before you can love your neighbors yourself. You have to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Then Augustine gets credit for it. He said, then go do whatever you want. If you love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, you do you. It'll be okay. And you'll have the capacity to love your neighbor as yourself. The ministry that you'll have unofficially, without a title, will bring God's kingdom here in whatever sense that means to us. Okay? The first part, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. The second, that gives you the capacity to live life wisely and love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 3, do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the table of your heart. And you come across the words in Proverbs, at least we do, Western people who speak English, and we see kindness and truth. And we just keep plowing because we have a definition in our minds of what being kind means and what truth means, and they're not wrong definitions. But if you were the people who read this, first of all, especially a Jewish person who read this from one of their kings, in the Hebrews, immediately those two words would jump off the page because they're two significant covenant words in the Old Testament. The word kindness is a word where we get our word love, right? It means commitment. It means I will be there for you. I will rescue you. I will reach out to you. I will show favor for you. It is used of God, describing God's commitment to those in covenant relationship with Him. The idea is I'll be there no matter what you go through. That's my promise, my commitment, my oath to you. The second word, truth, is similar to the first. Carries the ideas trust, trustworthy, faithful. I will keep the promise I just made. My kind promise. I will be there with you, walk with you, love you, faithful, rescue, take care of you. I have your back. I promise. So when these people say, do not let kindness and truth leave you, how many people do you have that kind of relationship with? And again, hopefully, if you're wearing one of these, you have at least one, right? Hopefully, not everyone does. But the only way that peace, that shalom is possible is if we have both parts of the equation. Love God like crazy, love your neighbors yourself. How do you do that? With kindness and truth. Commit yourself to people who will reciprocate and commit themselves to you. As long as I believe that I have to look out for myself because no one else is going to, I can't do that. I certainly can't do it well. I have to look out for myself because nobody else is going to. And yet we live in a world that celebrates beyond anything else it celebrates is self. It's about me. And I'm basically functioning as my own God because I want it to keep being about me. Instead of serving God in His kingdom, submitting to that, we serve ourselves in our tiny little kingdom. And the bigger our tiny kingdom is, the better we think we're doing. That's not proverbial. That's not Proverbs living. So anyway, what if I believed, having entered a covenant relationship with God through faith in Christ, that God promises, I'll look out for you, I'll take care of you, I'll walk with you, I will protect you, I'll cover the bases, I've got your back no matter what you go through, good, bad, or otherwise, no matter what you experience, God will be there for you. If I actually believe that, and by the way, the Bible says he promises all those things to believers, then for the first time in my life, I am a little more free, really, a lot more free to think about somebody else more than I think about myself. Now it sounds like Philippians. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to, but put others before you. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Right? I can actually give myself away. I can be generous and not worry about repayment. I can actually disadvantage myself if I know it's going to advantage the community. I think about Mike. I tried not to let your name be attached to this, but I think about Mike and all the work he did to get these lights done. You know, and Tom and Bill and a bunch of other people do a bunch of other things. Our men's prayer breakfast still cleans the church, and I'm so proud of them. But it's a disadvantage. I happen to know he loves his wife very much and enjoys being home. But he leaves his house all the time to get his carcass over here, to make sure the sprinklers are working and the bugs are out of the lights and that these happen and all this other stuff. But it's for the community. In my opinion, that's wise living. And I'm so much trouble for using him as an example now. I just know it. I can kiss that free lunch goodbye. But think about this. As a nation, as we drift farther and farther. Oh my God, my grammar Nazi's over there. So as we drift farther and farther away from God. Did I say it wrong? Farther. Yeah, I'm having epilepsy or something. I don't know what's going on. It's hard for us to think about putting others first because we don't think anyone has our back. You know, and it's so bizarre that most political parties, most leaders, servant leaders, no matter what, anyone who has influence over other people, they want to be known as people who helped others flourish. But we disagree so much on how to get there or who to blame when it doesn't happen. And we'll keep moving along. Proverbs, unless we fear God and keep his commandments, there is no basis where we will ever create an environment for mutual flourishing, which is what skillful living would do for us. That's what he's saying in verses 2-4. And the result of that, so you will find favor and good reputation in the sight of God and man. Now verse 5, now here's a verse you recognize. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean in your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. NIV, I said, in all your ways make him known, and acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths, is the old King James, I think. But anyway, we know those two verses, many of us. Familiar verses, powerful verses, and the word trust is still there. And here, the idea behind the Hebrew word is this is describe either a slave or a prisoner of war. And the idea was you would come and you would lay prostrate either before your victor, someone who won the war, or before a king or a regular slave of master. And you're totally submissive to them, totally vulnerable to them, so much so in a POW scenario, they would come down, if you want to kill me, it's okay. I know you have that right. Now, when we say, or quote, trust in the Lord with all your heart, that's not usually what we mean, right? That's a little bit more juiced to it when the Bible says it. God, we trust you. You can do whatever you want with my life. That's the idea. And the alternative to that is to what? Lean on your own understanding, which takes it all the way back to the first paragraph today. I'm going to call my own shots. I'm going to lean on my own understanding, thank you very much. That way I'll know at least I'll get mine. Proverbs describe this person as a fool. Someone who cannot be taught by anyone else. Someone who not only thinks they know it all, they live as if they know it all. I don't need someone else to tell me what to do. I don't need someone else to tell me how to live. I don't need God's commandments, and I certainly don't need to submit to anyone else. My Pulse team, they know I goofed up one of the songs really badly. And if but, are you willing to tell me that in your 13, good grief. August, well, we'll wait. 13, 14, 15 years, that you've acquired enough wisdom that you should just call your shots the rest of the way? I mean, when it comes to chores and homework, oh, look, you're struggling. I can see it now. I tried. But before we leave our wonderful teenagers, 30-year-olds, you've acquired enough wisdom? 40, 50, 60-year-olds, I've acquired enough wisdom to not need God's anymore? Get up in Daryl's levels, 70, 80. Right? He wouldn't tell you that. We need God's wisdom. If we're going to get it, we have to pursue it. If we pursue it, we'll be rewarded. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. I don't have more wisdom than God at this juncture on how to live. I know I need him. I have to trust him. I have to lay my life before him. I have a plan for my ministry future, right? But I have to lay myself before God and say, as long as that's okay with you. You know, the God who spoke the universe into existence. We have to trust him. He knows what he's doing. Don't lean on your understanding. In all your ways, make Christ known. In all your ways, acknowledge him. We talked again about it last week. It means to experience him, to have my relationship with Jesus and God the Father through the Spirit. So God doesn't have to yell at me through circumstances. He can just whisper and I'll hear him because my relationship is so close. The Hebrew word straight carries the idea of smooth, easy traveling. Sounds like that path from last week, right? So anyway, the idea of this path, it's not a gate. You know, I'm going to walk God's way. I'm going to do my best to fear God, obey him, and all that stuff. And here's the gate of wisdom. Yay. And I get to the point, I open the gate, I walk through. I'm wise now. Isn't that great? No. Wisdom is not a gate. Wisdom is a path. Some of us are farther along than our teenagers. Some of us are farther along than our 64-year-olds almost. But we're on the path. And if we're walking in wisdom, that's why the Bible says, find wise people to walk with you. People who are a little bit ahead of you. Encourage the ones that are a little bit behind you. Right? It's the very essence of discipleship. So anyway, easy traveling. I have the capacity to help other people because I'm not leaning on my own understanding. I'm making Christ known, and I'm trusting in him. So I have the capacity. My path is so straight, so easy, so smooth, I can help other people on their path to keep them going. So anyway, we have to stay on that path. In a culture where we want everything instantly, we'd far prefer that it were a gate. I'll go to sleep tonight, have a big book about Proverbs commentary. I'll put it under my pillow, wake up, get it through osmosis, and wake up and I'm wise. It's just not going to happen. It's a journey. You think about how you travel down that path. 1 foot in front of the other, 2 steps forward, sometimes a step back, sometimes 3. And we keep going. But you'll know whether or not you're walking skillfully is if you start to look back at life just a little bit, even as a teenager. Oh, I acted and I reacted better than I used to about that, you know? Everyone gets, and it's not the big moments. Oh, I had this crisis of faith and this happened or that happened. No, it's in the mundane, right? Everyone in life is going to have really big moments that are really good and really hard moments that are really bad. But it's, are you walking with God today? Are you trusting God today, not leaning on your own understanding? In all your ways, making him known. And are you walking the path he directs you to? That's the idea, step by step. Verse 7, our next to last verse that we'll actually look at today, as far as commentary. Do not be wise in your own eyes. No, don't be a know-it-all. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. What's the result? It will be healing to your body and refreshment to your bones. So the poetry there, both inside and out, it affects your body, right? How many people have to rest after a vacation? Right? That is so funny. Oh, I slept in this amazing bed when we were in, Timbuktu. But then we were going to get one. We were going to order it online, have it delivered by the time we got back. But we didn't. We got home and we slept on our own bed, and you know what? Life is good, right? We have to be careful. It's walking skillfully affects your inside. And if you're at peace, it affects your outside. I got time for one illustration before we move on. Diane used to take me, she used to drag me to all these health things for school. What were they called? Just a checkup kind of thing, blood pressure, heart rate, those kinds of things. Because if I went with her, her 2 sick days could be turned into a personal day. So I'd get dragged to those stupid things, and I've said this, I think, before, but every time I knew what was going to happen, they'd take my blood pressure, and up until just recently, it was always lower than it should have been, right? Not dangerous low, but low. And they said, could you stay just for a minute? I want to talk to you. I said, sure. And they said, how because I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm heavy. I should not have low blood pressure. I said, what are you doing? How many meds are you on for your blood pressure? I said, oh, none. Well, how many meds are you on for this? I said, oh, none. How many meds are you on, period? None. And that's still true. And I hope it stays true, but no guarantee. But they wanted to know. And so, I told them? I said, I sleep the sleep of the just. I said, I am right with God, and it helps me be right with people. So I'm not worried about this. You could have told me, hey, you're going to die tomorrow. And I'd be sad. I'd go see my kids and grandkids and my wife. I'd call a bunch of people, but I'd be okay. Being at peace on the inside affords you peace on the outside. And it affects your body. It brings health, refreshment to your bones. I wish my knees would get the message, but other than that, doing all right. Verse 9, honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of all your produce, so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Now, we're not going to talk about this hardly at all, but it's just simply saying this. Part of being wise is being a good steward of what God blesses you with. That's all. And it's not just money. It's time. It's energy. It's being involved in ministry so that others can flourish. God's been good to me. I want to give back to God, and you can't outgive him. We know that. But just be a wise steward. That's all it means. He's been generous to you. He wants to be more generous to you. But we have to be generous with our time, the gifts he's given us, the abilities, the talents, the skills. And oh yeah, the money stuff too. All right, real quick. You ready? And now it just goes one text after another. Here are the rewards if you'll live this way. Verse 13 says blessed. It means happy. Verse 14 moves to financial stuff. Profit and gain. Better than silver. Better than gold. Better than precious jewels. And some of us are thinking, well, how much better? right? Because most of us would be okay with a little more silver, a little more gold, a little more precious jewels. Wisdom is better than that. Better than anything you could desire. Verse 16, long life, riches, honor. Verse 17, pleasures and peace. Verse 18, life and happiness. Verse 22, life to your soul. Verse 23, security. Verse 24, you don't have to be afraid. Your sleep will be sweet. Verse 25, don't be afraid. And the text just goes on and on and on with more rewards. Isn't that what your soul is longing for? Isn't this what we want? Let me connect this to Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, just about a week ago, or a month ago. On that first Palm Sunday, there was a parade. Jesus on the donkey, disciples had their shades on, got their little wave going on, because everyone was cheering for the disciples. This is awesome, right? The people that were cheering were not viewing shalom very well. They were cheering because they thought, what? This guy's going to do something for us that we wanted for a long time. He's going to overthrow the Roman government, and we're going to be who we need to be again. We'll cheer for that. That's our agenda. Here's our ticket. We're going to back him. But Jesus basically tells them he's not going to do that. And that same crowd, by the way, the disciples aren't doing this anymore, are they? They're ducking and running. Because that same crowd, probably just as loudly, maybe louder, that were shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, are now shouting, crucify him. He's not doing for us what we wanted him to. It's just an illustration of the difference between being in charge. I'll root for Jesus if he's going to do what I want him to. I'll walk with Jesus if he gives me everything I want. I have to be careful about the wisdom of man, because I believe that's what happened. Take it back to the Christmas story, right? Baby shows up in Bethlehem, no room in the inn. You know the drill, most of you, right? A couple years later, most people think two, these kingmakers called wise men. Wise men. The Magi, I would say it. Who knows how you actually say it, right? But they were the wisdom elite of the day. They follow a star. And when they see Jesus, they lay their gifts before him and bow down in trust. They recognize that they're before the king, at least a king. One songwriter says, what a strange way to save the world. A lot of us take some criticism, some silent, non-physical mocking for our beliefs surrounding Easter. You're going to follow a guy that was killed? You're going to follow a baby that couldn't get a room reservation? Right? Paul writes about it a little bit later. And I'll close. I'll close with this. 1 Corinthians 1, 18 and 20. Listen for wisdom and listen for the world's view of wisdom. For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. It is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside. Where's the wise man? Where's the scribe? Where's the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. For indeed, Jews ask for signs and Greeks search for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified. To Jews a stumbling block, and to the Gentiles foolishness. But to those who are the called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. Because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. And because of that, we can say, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. For it's the power of God unto salvation to the Jew first and also to the Greek. The wisdom of man bows before the foolishness of God. Jesus said it himself, if you listen to me and believe, you are like a wise man who builds his house on the rock. And when the storms of life come, you will endure. But if you don't listen to what I have to say, you're just a fool. And you will build your house on the sand. And when the storms of life come, your life will be wasted away. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's a fool that despises wisdom and instruction. The rewards of wisdom are beyond calculation. But the consequences of not living wisely are beyond calculation as well. God, thanks for the day. Thanks for your word. Thanks for a congregation that sure at least seems like they love hearing about it. So I pray that even today's text would help us to know how to live wisely, which will simply mean that we have a closer relationship with you, so that as you direct our paths, we'll not only recognize it, but we'll run to be where you want us to be and do what you want us to do. And all God's people said, I have these announcements for you. Go home.